Welcome back to the podcast and to a special end-of-year Christmas episode. Today is part one of likely 3 episodes I'll be releasing over the festive period. Making this selection was difficult as there are so many episodes that have been released this year, so I looked at the top episodes in terms of listenership, and then within them, I looked at the most listened to segments within those recordings. So essentially, it's the best of 2024 chosen by you. Today's selection of guests include Matty Green, Andy Allan, Julia Jules, Taylor James, Chrissie Wunna, Dr. Joey Webber, and Dr. Joey Liu. Check out the show notes for the chapter lists and all the topics covered. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, and to all of you who've been tuning in week after week, and even just on occasion, your support means the absolute world to me. I hope you enjoy this selection of conversations from the last year.
Obviously, within me, I've been trained to be a violent human being when needed to be. That's still there. It'll always will be there. You can never switch off from that. But I'd like to think that that guy will never have to come out ever again. Mm-hmm. But he's there if he needs to be, especially when it comes to my family.
Yeah.
If I need to look after them, they're getting looked after.
Yeah.
I feel as a man, everybody should learn, not even just a man, as I want my girls to learn some form of martial art, know how to look after themselves. It'll teach discipline. I highly rate jiu-jitsu, judo, boxing, kickboxing, just something to learn how to defend themselves if it ever needed to happen.
Sure.
I'll definitely be teaching my girls in case the worst happened. They know how to defend themselves or give themselves the very best chance to not get attacked. We'll put it that way. So everybody should learn some form. But we, obviously during the Marines, it has to be controlled aggression. So you use it, but it's controlled. You'll never lose your rag fully and see red because you've lost your ability to work then.
Sure.
It has to be able to be switched on and switched off literally at the flick of a switch.
Yeah.
If you see red and continue to rage, what can you do? You know, we're capable of doing anything. Probably not good if you're just in this red raw state where you're just absolutely raging. It has to be controlled. You know, so yeah, I'm like anyone. I'll lose my shit at some stuff, but I like to think, well, I know I can control it.
It's like the zones stuff isn't it? Again, it's like the training. It's like you know you can go to that level, but you need to bring it back down quickly.
Yeah,
otherwise you're gonna just lose your mind or burn out. Right?
Yeah. It's no good for anyone to be angry at stuff. I try not to let stuff bother me. The road, for example.
The what? Sorry,
the road. The roads.
Oh yeah.
There's so many idiots who drive on the road.
Yeah,
and you know, they forget they're in charge of a machine capable of wiping out an entire family.
Yeah.
And some people don't know how to drive fully, and that can sometimes wind me up. Again, try not to let it come out, especially in front of the kids. But
road rage.
It's not good. Yeah, it's not good for anyone. But yeah, going back to what I feel about being a man, especially today, I'll go back to when I joined the Marines. If I went to someone with a problem, and maybe it was, you know, I might have had PTSD or something like that. If I'd have said something in the early 2000s, the late 90s, early 2000s, it would have been, fucking hell, mate, get your shit together. Stop being a pussy. That's not the best way to deal with stuff like this. And I'm lucky in that my short, 10 years, my short career in the military saw a huge mindset shift in that. And now to this day, it's, what am I on? 13 years since I was in Afghanistan, 14 years. We still message each other now regularly. How's everyone doing? Is everyone okay? So that mindset of being a tough man and taking everything on your shoulders, being a burden, not burdening anybody, that's kind of changed now, which I'm glad, because you shouldn't be suffering in silence. But at the same time, in my opinion, you should be able to have a certain amount of strength and not just let something define who you are. And if, I feel the mental health card's been used quite a lot in the wrong way.
Yeah.
In the wrong way. People will use it so easily to get time off work.
Yeah.
And it devalues, those people who truly need it, who truly are going through shit times.
Yeah.
Will probably feel like, well, just another one who's pulling the mental health card, or they're just another one. Do you know what I mean? And that's a stigma in itself, which should be squashed.
Yeah, I feel like at the moment it's like this scale, like it goes one way and then it goes the other, and I think the answer's somewhere in the middle. And certainly, I can only speak from my experience as a man. So as a man, I feel like sometimes maybe you need a bit more tough love. Sometimes, maybe not, full on old school.
Yeah.
Maybe do it. Maybe sometimes we need to talk, but then maybe sometimes I need to say to you, mate, get your fucking shit together.
Yeah.
I know, and I look back on my own experience and I think, when did I need someone to tell me to man up? When did I need someone to give me a cuddle?
Yeah.
And that's
balance. And that's where we need to find that balance. Yeah, exactly that. And it's a tough one.
Yeah.
But if you're around people who like I know, I can count on my hand who I could say, get your fucking shit together. Stop being a dick.
Yeah.
There's other people who if I said that to, they'd crumble.
Just break them, yeah.
Yeah. So it's knowing where to use that. And obviously a lot of lads who I know are going through a lot of challenges at the moment. Battles in their own head. The war might be over, but not for them.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but I feel as a man and as a father, we should be strong.
Yeah.
For the family, physically fit, strong, able, but also compassionate and able to talk, and not just maybe generations above are just shun their sons or daughters.
Yeah.
But being able to open the door and be like, look, I'm always here and I love you unconditionally.
What are your tips on staying married?
Wow. Where's Ricky gone? Compromising. You've got to learn to compromise. Sometimes I don't do that.
You compromised on?
Oh, God. I don't know, just learning. And I think marriage, by no means am I a marriage counsellor or maybe even any good at marriage, but
you're still married.
Yeah, I'm still married. Yeah, we're like 10 years. We're 10 years deep now. So
amazing.
Learning to love them no matter what. Learning, we all bicker, obviously, but it's trying to put those things aside. Vicky and I are both lucky in the fact that both of our parents are still together as well. Which it's not very common, is it?
Common, so
not common at all. Yeah. I think we spend sometimes a bit too much time apart, even though we run and work at the same place. It's hard when we've got the 3 kids, and they obviously take priority over everything. So it's just trying to be a team, being a team together for the purpose of those 3 little darlings that we're bringing up, and compromising where we need to. We don't go out enough together.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that'll change once the girls get a little bit older.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Seems like I've got it together, man.
I did not expect that one.
Yeah. No, it does. And it's nice to see, and obviously, I was going to ask about, getting children into fitness and stuff, but to me, it seems really obvious. It's leading by example, right? And they're obviously being brought up around a gym and stuff like that. So I presume that's going to be probably the best approach.
Yeah, we're lucky that they only know this gym. They only know people who work out.
Yeah.
Again, they're in an echo chamber of seeing our gym members work hard and compete. It has to rub off, and I hope it does. I don't want to push them into anything they don't want to do. I want them to learn as many different sports as possible. but I want them to want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't want them to do it because I'm telling them to do it.
Yeah.
And for me, what will be one of my proudest achievements is if they do things because they fitness, competitions, sports, because they want to do it.
Yeah.
Seeing Libby did cross country last year in the horrible weather.
Yeah.
7 years old at the time, cracked it. Didn't phase her. You know, she's tiny, wet through.
Yeah.
Didn't let it bother her. You can't teach that.
No.
You can't teach it.
No.
She either wants to do it or she doesn't. And I'll never make them do anything they don't want to do. So the second they want to stop gymnastics, I'll ask them why.
Yeah.
The second they want to start something else up, might be darts, let's go for it.
Yeah.
Might be something completely different. But as long as they want and hopefully keep a good attitude towards fitness and eating well, eating the right foods,
yeah,
I've done my job.
Yeah.
We have done our jobs.
Awesome. Let's talk cold water. What's your cold water journey been? Obviously, I spoke to you at the wedding about it, and you were looking at me like, I don't know, like, this guy's mad.
Yeah.
And I was like, just try it. Just honestly, just try it. And I'd imagine I probably said, do what I do is when I first started, which was lather yourself up and then wash it off at the end. And that's out like, that's how it started for me. And then obviously.
Yeah. So you obviously gave me sort of that advice, but I was fully aware of, sorry, no, not fully aware. I was aware of the benefits of cold water, but not in a big way. You know, I kind of thought, oh, recovery from sport and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Me and you, it was very interesting at Phil's wedding. Everyone disappeared in the afternoon. Just like after the wedding breakfast, everyone went, and we were waiting for the night guests, and me and you were basically left. And,
right.
and I remember having this crack, and you explained about your experience with ice exposure, and at the time, you were sort of avoiding boozing and stuff like that. I remember you explicitly saying, you know, if you felt like you wanted to have any beer or whatever it might be, that you would go and run a cold bath and you jump in it, and that would give you the buzz, somehow give you some kind of reason to not do it.
It's the dopamine hit. So, because I've since done research, listened to lots of podcasts.
Yeah.
And it's, so they reckon that I was talking before about filling the dopamine pool so that there's plenty of waves available to go up and down or whatever. Yeah. One of the ones is cold water. And they reckon that the effects of doing the cold plunge last about 3 to 4 hours afterwards.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, the buzz you might get off, I don't know, someone liking you on social media, or do you know what I mean? Something, or having a bit of chocolate or some sugary food or whatever. It's going to be like last. But yeah, the cold water thing is, and I just came across it I've always from a young age was liked the feeling of cold water. It was kind of scary, but it was always like weirdly refreshing.
I was never interested.
And I started doing it because I would notice that I couldn't get out the shower. So I wouldn't be able to get out of a hot shower. I'd spend hours not hours, but 20 minutes minimum every morning. And
an expensive child.
Yeah, well, always, my mum would always be like, "Come on, you're running late for school or whatever." I just couldn't get out.
Yeah.
And again, it's that my propensity for pleasure, and again, it's dopamine again. That hot feeling.
Yeah.
And and I just do it to myself. I'll just sit there with the hot tap, and I'm kind of well, I could get out, but this is really nice.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my late 20s where I started finishing on cold And then all of a sudden I felt like so much better.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's got to be something in this. This was before Wim Hof did it.
Oh,
No.
interesting.
But like before I heard about any of the Wim Hof stuff, and it was just like, oh, I feel better when I do that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start doing that.
Right.
And then someone said, oh, you want to like this guy called Wim Hof or whatever. Yeah. But of course, just finishing on cold kind of doesn't cut it anymore.
No.
So that's why I've got to have the plunge in the plunge in the backyard. So, but yeah, it's amazing. And sorry, going back to what you were saying, because we were talking about drinking, because I don't drink.
Yeah.
And when I was first trying to quit, I guess it's like a state shifter. You can just totally change, and I still use it now. Not necessarily as much for cravings because I don't really get them anymore. But if I'm if I'm just in a bad mood, or like I struggle with rest days.
Yeah.
Really struggle.
Yeah.
Because I love the structure of like starting the day and like getting the adrenaline going or whatever, and it just sorts me out. So when the days when I need to have a rest, I really struggle. But having the cold water is like just so I've got, at least I'm getting that little buzz.
Yeah.
But it's literally the best thing to, if you want to like change your state of mind, go out for a run or go out for a long walk. But if you want something quick, cold water, it's got to be the best thing.
I fully support that, and I got that exactly what you've just said. Then I totally got that vibe of you from the wedding. And I remember thinking, right, Jace is here having a great time, not on booze. I want to, I feel like I owed it to you, based on the conversation we'd had, deep conversation, to actually give it a go. And by the way, I'm the kind of guy who would turn up at Coniston Pier and all these mates like dive in, and I'm like touching my toe in the water, and I'm like, oh, I don't know about not today, mate, and maybe go in, and then eventually being all right with it, but kind of being like, that was horrible. So when I turned the shower for the first time cold, I'm not kidding, like 5 to 7 seconds, and it was horrendous, like awful. Thought I would never want to do it again, but I was like, but I know the science says that this stuff, you get used to it, you build up a tolerance. And the more I've learned, I'm not going to, there's podcasts and stuff that you can listen to understand the actual benefits. But I would say that roughly 65 to 75% of my showers are cold showers now.
Yeah.
And I feel like I benefit massively from it. Like massively. And my tolerance for it, like you turn it cold, and sometimes you're that tolerant to it that you wonder if it's as cold as it was. Yeah. You kind of like, is it
when it starts getting warmer?
Yeah,
like when this, when you get to spring, summer, you kind of like, it doesn't have the same effect.
Yeah. But the benefits I've had with that are amazing. And just while we're on Wim Hof and the cold exposure, someone just like you said you should listen to Wim Hof and like his audiobook or whatever, and I am an audiobook guy. I hate reading. So I listened to it, and half of the book I was listening to it for the cold exposure, half of the book was breathing. So I was kind of like, ugh. Like at first I was like, okay, move on to the cold exposure stuff. And the more I listened to it, the more I was kind of like, well, all right, maybe he's like onto something here. And there was one in particular moment when I was driving home from work from Barrow at the time. So it's like 25 minute drive. And it was a chapter where it was Wim Hof talking about breathing for athletic performance. And it was the anecdotal evidence that he gave was around Alistair Overeem, who is a UFC, or was, maybe still is, a UFC fighter. And basically, he had adopted Wim Hof's method for breathing during training, night times, whatever during the day that he felt appropriate, but also before the event as well.
You do it in between rounds, or was it just
Probably. He never. I can't remember him saying that, but I imagine this was a feature. But it was certainly a feature of doing it before the event.
Yeah.
And just getting that practice in. And there was a big part of me that was like, come on, like, how much can breathe? Like, you breathe as much as you need to breathe. Your body will tell you. And it was really, really interesting because I drove home that night, and it was at the time I was training for this world record for the Turkish get-ups, which we've talked about. And at the time, I think I'd done, let's say, for argument's sake, I'd done 25 minutes of world record pace. So I had like loads to go. The book said, and the evidence said, do the Wim Hof method, which I'd done a few times. I must have done maybe 10 times over the last couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Do the breathing and then get into the workout. But when you do the workout, also breathe deeply. So don't just do the prep, which is roughly 5 to 10 minutes. Do the deep breathing during the workout. So I was like, right, I'll do this. First time I ever tried it. And I went from something like 25 minutes to about 40 minutes. I did like another 15 minutes of that. And I'm pretty sure I only stopped because maybe like I was getting like calluses on my hand or something like that. And that is the moment that I was like, oh my God.
What is it that's healing for you when you're in your professional work?
It feels really satisfying and gratifying to create a space where someone feels completely accepted and seen and cared for. Like there's a level of human connection that I find really like soul nourishing on a level that I don't often experience in other aspects of my life.
So it's the intimacy.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Why? Because in those moments in a session, we are two people, myself as the dominant and my submissive, who are completely real. Like there's no masks. There's no reason to pretend. There's no reason to hide our true feelings. And the fact that it's such a deep, I mean, not always, I've had some sessions that were just like, that was fine. So it's not always, but to have such a connection with someone that isn't sexual nor romantic, it's just human, is very unique in our culture. And to me, I feel like it opens something inside me that's like, wow, there's so much possible for human connection. There's so many other ways to see things and to experience life, than like, this is how you are with your friends. This is how you are in romance. This is how you are with your siblings. This is how you are with your family. And it can be sort of superficial, or like the ways that we have to engage in the world sometimes to, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but like, oh, we can't say that with that person. Can't do that with that person. Kind of have to hold back this or that with, certain people who may not understand. But in the dungeon, it's like, wow, this is like our safe little wild playground. And because we have set up boundaries and have set up how kind of loosely how the session's going to go, there actually is a lot of freedom in that. And so it's like, okay, well, here are the guardrails. Let's see what happens. So there's a freedom in that. And yeah, it's like being a kid again and, playing pretend, playing imagination in some like wild space. And yeah, just being able to be free and be like truly authentic and give that experience to another person
and
myself.
And so, and besides that connection, why is it that you think you've come to this point, and why does it mean so much to you? Why do you think that is?
I've always been someone who's like, for as long as I can remember, curious about people and curious about sexuality, curious about relationships. And in my early 20s, really, well, like 19, 20, I had a boyfriend who, like, we were both equally curious. And so it was really fun. Like, we had a lot of fun. And he was the first person that I was really sexual with. And so I was like, oh, this is how it always is. And then, time went on and we broke up and I dated other people, and it was like, oh, this is not how it is. And I felt like, maybe because I'm, a woman of a certain age who was raised in a culture where at least the message I got was like, I was supposed to be sort of, I don't know if subservient is the right word, but kind of like go along with whatever my partner wanted. As the woman, I wasn't supposed to really take charge or say what I wanted. And so like I had a lot of like not great experiences with people, and I couldn't understand why they didn't know, like they were supposed to read my mind or something. I mean, I was young at the time too, but then as I got older, it just felt like, I think something might be wrong with me. Like, I'm not supposed to enjoy sex, or I'm not supposed to have a sex drive, or I'm not supposed to.
How old were you when you thought this?
Like early 30s, like probably most of my 30s, I felt that way. And then, at 40, it was kind of like, well, I don't know. I'm older now, like who cares? But still just had my own kind of like hold back and uncertainties. And then once I started exploring kink and BDSM from a kind of like more educational perspective, or like really diving into it from a place of like wanting to learn about it. Like, I want to learn the foundations of it. I want to learn the history. I want to learn, where all this comes from. And then it was like, oh, there's a name for people like me. We're kinky. And that's actually totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Being kinky does not mean you're a sex addict. It does not mean you're a deviant. It does not mean you're, like we started the conversation with, like you're broken in some way, or you're whatever. It doesn't mean anything bad or shameful. It just means that you're someone who is curious, adventurous. There's actually some research around people who are kinky are like more sensation seeking generally in life. There are people who might engage in like bungee jumping and skydiving and like driving too fast or whatever. Just like there's this novelty and this sensation seeking that they generally have in life. And so it was like, okay, wow, I now have the language and the information and the education to understand myself. And so I don't enter into relationships just hoping and praying and keeping my fingers crossed that this person will be into the same things that I am, or I'll be able to talk to them about things, about, you know, sexuality. I now can go into a relationship with like, okay, these are my must-haves, nice to haves, whatever. But like, I can't be with someone who isn't equally as open-minded as I am. And that doesn't mean they have to do everything that I want to do, but there's like a common ground that we have to start from. So being able to now understand that and reflect on how many years I felt like something was wrong with me and how that impacted so many areas of my life, not just romance and, you know, in the bedroom. It was just like this kind of like fundamental, like, why am I like this feeling?
And
yeah.
Can I just hover over that one for a minute? So you mentioned about, you know, why am I like this? How were you? Is this like, you know, you had this need for sort of dominance in the bedroom or anything? How did that show up practically?
Not necessarily, although yeah, not necessarily that, but just more openness and playfulness, and
You were more open.
Yeah.
And it was those characteristics that you thought were abnormal and felt like you were broken. Am I getting that right?
Well, and it was just more about being open about enjoying pleasure, being open about enjoying sex, and probably having a little bit more of a higher libido than some of the people that I met anyway, you know, and being judged for that and being like shamed for my natural self. And it was like, oh, well, if this person that I love and want to have a relationship with is telling me that, then maybe there is something wrong. And then, I mean, also like the kind of messages that we get in our culture, you know, like some of the tests that in the US anyway, that somebody might take if they feel like they might have sex addiction are pretty harsh. Like the guidelines are like, what? Like, you know, some of the questions are like, do you sometimes use sex to change how you feel? Like if you're stressed or in a bad mood, it's like, well, yeah, who doesn't?
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be bad. If you have more than like one orgasm a day, that's could be considered a problem. And it's like, wow, who made that rule?
Yeah. I would put my own stamp on that, and I would say that it depends if you're completely draining the tank.
Or if it's getting in the way of your job, if it's getting in the way of your relationship, if it's getting in the way of, you know, going to the gym, other things in your life that you're really committed to, that you have, you know, values around health and fitness and values around doing well at work, being a stand-up person in your family. Those are like very strong values for someone. And it's, you know, their sex life, however they're exploring their sexuality is getting in the way of that. Then they might need to take some time to be like, okay, I need to kind of reorganize my priorities here. But to go so quickly to like a diagnosis and a pathology is not helping anyone.
Yeah. See, I feel like if you're over the age of maybe like 35 or 40 and you're having to go to the bathroom for a wank, and because your libido is that high, I want to know what you're taking and what your diet is. Because like like a high libido is healthy, isn't it? And this is something that I don't mind saying I've sort of leaned into somewhat as I've gained a bit more wisdom and started understanding my masculinity a bit more. And I think, like you say, so much of you know, growing up in certainly cultures that, you know, have like, you know, we've got like a lot of as you do, Irish culture, which is Catholicism and stuff, and there's a lot of shame around, you know, sex and stuff like that, and even like the discussion around like toxic masculinity and stuff. And obviously I'm taking this down a slightly male perspective, or a very male perspective, but like I used to think that having like certain sexual urges was like unhealthy, and I felt that I needed to be like sanitized, you know, in order to, you know, not come across like this like chauvinistic male, like, you know. And what I realized is, and I think can't remember where I sort of started going down this rabbit hole. I think it started with just like health and fitness and like testosterone and stuff, and then kind of paying attention to like how I feel in certain things, and like how like libido and testosterone, how these things to talk to one another. I'm realizing that if I'm like sat down somewhere in a bar or something, a girl calls past and I go like, oh fucking hell, that's not only is that normal, but it's healthy. And those, you know, and again, this is, I mean, a potentially male and female conversation, but this is just my experience as a male. It's like true masculinity is like having that drive and that power and that fire, but having it under control. How much better could this conversation be if I have no judgment coming into it? And it was just like a little like reframe, just to kind of like step back a bit, because that's what you do, isn't it, when you're doing your research and you're looking into this person's history or whatever, or this person, and you start to build up this like image of them, and I'm like, but maybe it's wrong. So it's like having that beginner's mind to sort of like.
But I also think that makes you very good at what you do, because I've done a lot of these kind of like things. I do a lot of like, you know, like interviews and stuff, whether it's for the Waffle or like for the like shows and stuff now. Whereas, and I'm not just saying this has been the one where I felt like we've had a few messages on Instagram, but like I generally feel like I'm sat down with a friend who is calling me out on stuff. It is questioning me. Like, it hasn't been the generic kind of conversation of like, well, what happened to your mom? Who's been your favorite guests on the podcast? It has been a very authentic conversation about stuff that I don't normally get to talk about. So genuinely, I'm loving this.
Oh, that's so nice. So, honestly, that's really nice of you to say. You almost brought a tear to my eye there, because like this is a very new project. Well, I say very new. I've been doing it over a year, but I've only really just started publishing stuff. So to sit across, albeit digitally, from someone who's been doing it for 4 years and is doing the thing, that means a lot. So I appreciate that. I do feel like this is something I should be doing. You know, there's like, what did they say? Like a full body yes.
Yeah.
Hasn't always been the case though. Like some of my earlier episodes, I was kind of like, I would come off the call and I feel like, whoa, like that was cool, but I feel fucking frazzled. Like I feel a bit anxious. I feel like angry. I have this weird like like not angry, but like irritation. Like if I spend too much time on a screen or whatever, and so I really had to be like, hold on, like take it back. What's going on here? And there's actually one of my best friends, Dave. He's the guy that will call me out and shit all the time, and he was like, "You don't look relaxed," and like I'm all about like standing desk, so I have a standing desk, and all about like, posture and functional fitness, yeah, and I'm like, "Welcome to the podcast." Obviously, it wasn't like that, but like I was just a bit rigid, and I wasn't enjoying it. So I was like, okay. And the same thing with ones that I've done in person and recorded on set, and it's like, it's been amazing, but there's too much stress put on me. Yeah. So I was like, right, how can I make this as easy as possible? Right, let's go back to digital only. You know, obviously the connection it's not the same as in real life, is it? But I think if you can just relax into it and just think of it like a phone call, because there's something about like, if you think that it's going to be the same looking at a person as in real life, that's not the case. But if you reframe it as in, this is a phone call and you're able to see that person, then it's a really beautiful thing.
But mine was built digitally, like during the pandemic. This has only been since having the studio. The only ones, I think, probably 10 face-to-face interviews that I've done in total. Because I think if you're in your environment, I'm in mine, I feel comfortable instantly because I'm not, in somewhere where I feel like it might take me a while to settle in, or I feel like, well, I don't really belong here. I have it quite often when people come into the studio and they'll almost freak because it's just like the cameras will go on, the lights will go on. And it's like, this isn't like, it's almost like alien to a lot of people. And I think once you or your guest is comfortable, the conversation is just going to be so much better because you're in an environment that you feel, well, safe.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Hey, I wonder where, like, in 2030, 19th of April in 2030, in 6 years' time, let's put that down as a marker. I wonder how we will look back on this technology.
Yeah.
Like, wonder what we'll be doing. Like, whether...
Do you reckon it'd be like holograms?
I think so. I think, like the metaverse, all that shit. Like, there's obviously... Yeah, it'll be something like that, won't it? Surely. So that'd be really interesting. And if that's we'll have to do one in exactly 6 years' time. Stick it in your calendar. Yeah. And then we'll look back and go, like, what's the difference in technology in 6 years? Who knows? We might not be fucking here, though. So do you think podcasting is saturated?
I think by celebrities, yes. Or people with a huge platform. Completely saturated. However, I don't think it is from an independent point of view, because I think there is a lot of people that have such a talent for talking or bringing out certain aspects in people that have a story to tell that deserve to tell it on these platforms. So it's a weird one. Yes, I do, because the fact that, like, I mean, I love Jamie Lang, but the fact that he has like 3-4 podcasts, I'm like, I don't have time to listen to 4 versions of Jamie Lang talk about different things. 9 times out of 10 with the same celebrity. However, conversations like this, like, I'm going to get so much value out of.
I was already thinking about Anna before I was thinking about Dick, so...
Anna was so hot.
She's got a lot of admirers.
She is sexy, though. Like, her aura, there's like a ooh la la about her. I fancy Anna.
Do
Anyway,
you know Do you know she gave me an off-camera wink when we're on set?
It's like a Hollywood it's like a Paul Hollywood handshake that on Naked Attraction.
Yeah, it was like this moment where like everything went still and like no one was looking. She looked over and she just went, and I was like, wow.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous. She didn't wink at me.
I know. Do you know, I'd love to have her on the show, actually. I sent her a DM a while ago, but she blanked me, so...
Oh, that's sad. Maybe you can, like... Oh,
maybe we should just talk about her now, and we'll clip it up, and then tag her.
Yeah, and see what she says. I've spoken to her since, like...
Well, you're a celeb, Chris.
No.
Chrissie.
I wish if I was, there'd be no chance. I'd be like rinsing it.
I bet you're in her primary. I'll be in her requests.
No, you're in
cesspit of requests.
No, we've had like the randomest, most popular date on not first dates, on Naked Attraction ever for some reason. I don't know. It was just so talked about. It was talked about because you pied me off. And then the whole of Yorkshire was like, what?
Yeah, so all right, let's talk about that. So you say I pied you off. So
you didn't pie me off. Why are you not even looking at me? You're like looking away. I want eye contact.
Because you make me nervous.
Why? You had already met me fully naked. We'd seen each other. We'd talked to each other in the pod. So there's all these other guys. And then I had picked you over Ion in that last minute. Do you know what I mean? And
picked
so
the wrong
you
guy.
Have been feeling confident at that point.
You picked the wrong guy, Chrissie. Should have gone for Ion.
You should be like, oh, she picked me. And in fact, when I did pick you, you were actually saying that. You were all like, oh, I can't believe I've got picked. You were like that. And then you pied me off.
Yeah.
So
how did that feel?
When you pied me off,
yeah.
It made me feel shocked. But if I'm honest, I expected it because the way the date was going, it was not a bad date, do you know what I mean? But the way it was going, I was like, oh, we're just going to end up being mates. You know what I mean? So it didn't feel so bad because I expected it. It only feels bad if a guy is selling you something where, you know how a guy is always like, I love you, I want you. Then all of a sudden you find out they've cheated on you. That is disturbing.
Not been through that myself, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. Oh, is it? Have you never been cheated on?
No, I have, but not by a guy.
Oh.
Just the way you said it.
The same. It
yeah.
has no gender.
Well, yeah. I just started some psychotherapy actually, and we've been going through cheating on stuff. So yeah. No, it's good.
Right.
Like it's good. I love it. It's awesome. Like because I'm so interested in like psychology and like why am I like this and I'm so interested in it and I'll be there with this therapist and I'm like, oh wow, yeah, and that's because of this, and then I'm like, fucking hell, this is my life, and then I'll cry.
Oh yeah, but that's really healthy because as long as it makes you smile, you know, finding out and learning about yourself is a really good, you know, therapy. It's a, you know, you can't go through life not really feeling comfy in your own skin. I think that's the worst thing you can do. And whenever I chat to you, you always act like really shy or really insecure. And I don't, you know, you're not. You've been on a show with completely naked.
Yeah. You know,
like, that is not something an insecure guy would do. So that means you were comfortable and you were confident enough to do that.
Mm.
And you got your guitar out and you sang and you weren't nervous about that. You know what I mean? So
no, I was very calm actually. Like I was strangely calm for the whole experience. Do you know what I mean? I felt like I was just in a game.
Well, it is a game.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, and actually that was like one thing I was telling myself before I was going on the show. Like, life is a game. Don't take yourself too seriously. Like, just have fun. Don't, you know, because it was obviously very new to me to be doing anything like that.
Yeah, but there's not answers to everything. I always think you always try and find a solution to every problem, and sometimes there's not that. we're all just passing through. And I could come off this podcast now, walk across the street and get splattered by a bus or something, and you would be my last moment on this earth. You know what I mean? And there's, you know, in those moments, there doesn't have to be a why or a what. You just have to live in the moment, I think. Because you never know what could happen. And I always hate it when you're so insecure, because you're actually so confident. Like, I'm really good at seeing the things that are so wonderful about you. You know what I mean? Like, whenever you act like, oh no, I feel shy because it's you. I'm like, why? Because to me, you are really confident. You always play like you're a bit broken, but I don't think you're broken at all.
Yeah, I don't. No, and I don't either. I honestly don't. I believe that, well, correction. I believe that everyone's like had a little bit, you know, everyone's a bit broken in some ways. I don't like the term broken. Everyone has challenges, emotional challenges or whatever. But I think I'm just very vulnerable about it. I'm very open about like my experience with like mental health and alcohol and, you know, fill in the blank. So I think sometimes that might come across like I'm portraying myself as broken, but it's not that. I think I'm just like, I took so much inspiration from people who I've followed, like podcasters and stuff, who were very vulnerable and have gone through difficult shit. So so for me, it's kind of like therapeutic to just like be totally open and, you know, and with the hope that like someone is listening who has been through similar things and is able to take some strength and go, okay, well, yeah, this guy's struggled with alcohol or whatever, but he's doing great now. Like, I want to be a good influence. And that's happened like to a certain extent with my minuscule following online. Like, a few people have reached out.
It's not minuscule. It's not minuscule. Even if you change one person's life, it's not the amount of followers, it's the people that you affect. You know what I mean? 5 people could watch a video, and it doesn't matter if you've changed their lives in some way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like just one person. That's all that matters, isn't it?
Because it's not about the numbers. Who cares? It's not about video views. It's just about any person, that whether it's 1 or like 1 million, it doesn't matter. If you've helped someone, they'll never forget that. You know, they'll always remember that. Life is about making memories, you know, and anyone that's inspired you. And you will have inspired so many people, you know. Like, you've definitely inspired me. You've inspired so many people, and sometimes you don't even realise.
Maybe someone's in a similar situation and they have a certain moment in time, like clockwork, and then they get triggered somehow. They feel lonely. They're low on energy. How come in that moment, how can we look at it? How can we be equanimous in a moment such as that?
I think it is really becoming up close and personal with your emotions as you feel them, as they arise, and embracing them. So when you're lonely, you're lonely. When you're happy, you're happy. When you're sad, you're sad. You're fully present with the emotion and experience. The equanimity to loneliness would be recognizing that I've put a dislike onto the loneliness, and based upon that dislike, based upon sense of self, creation over time, this is now triggering emotions and feelings, and it's creating a thingy. So equanimity is just noticing, oh, I'm disliking this because I'm perceiving this as loneliness. Cut. It's not loneliness. You being on your own is not loneliness. No one's ever said that that's loneliness, other than an unhappy person on their own going, I'm lonely. You're not objectively lonely there. Your whole body's alive. Your whole cells and everything is still moving, and the energy is alive and kicking. And say it's depleted even, that's signifying your body needs rest. So you're in a restorative state. You're not lonely. You just need, your body's saying, I need to fucking chill, mate. You're pushing me too hard. This high rocks thing is really fucking me up. So give me time to 1-2 hours to be by myself and restore so I can perform for you again. Because if you don't neglect that and you're negative towards your resting periods, then you will just become this type of character that will burn out and have a bloody meltdown at some point. because you have to embrace the rest. So so I would challenge your very notion of loneliness and say it's resting. And if you're physically on your own, say it's reflection. And if you're tired, you need to sleep, reconceptualize some of your experiences. They don't have to be what you think they are. I'm not lonely, I'm learning. I'm now in a place I can listen to a podcast. I'm now in a place that I can read a book. The human has to have a bit of loneliness in a day to process and be themselves. I think we have a massive tendency to avoid that because we're scared of who we are, because we've been so used to avoiding and suppressing and all kinds of fucking shit and bad healthy coping strategies like drinking and smoking and God knows what. So we're we don't like being alone, so we're constantly trying to get away from it. And then when we're on our own, the paradox is it feels 10 times worse because we're not used to those negative maladaptive coping strategies. So of course it's going to feel worse. So reconceptualize it all and own your well-being. If you're feeling fucking shit, it's probably because of lack of sleep, lack of this, lack of that. Let's figure out what it is. And that's the wisdom part of equanimity coming in, of being it's an intellectual thing as well as a feeling thing, and the two combined, powerful as hell. But if you just focus intellectually, you're never going to get anywhere. And if you just focus feeling level, you're never going to get anywhere. But it's the integration. So it's at all times, open monitoring your experience as it is, practicing acceptance, curiosity, compassion for yourself, compassion for others, and you will just feel fucking great.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, that was awesome. I'm gonna listen to that if it happens again, and I'm gonna use this as a turning point to change my cognitive biases around what's going on in that situation.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be good. Yeah, look at it.
Put some snazzy music on behind it.
Put some snazzy music on. But I think also, if it's lonely, feel lonely, and that you're okay to feel lonely. Good to feel lonely.
I think I used to be better at it actually, and I would feel that emotion a bit more or whatever. But then this is what happens. We go through cycles, don't we? And then I got into the masculine, high rocks, let's go.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's extremely dopaminergic rather
nice
than
word.
Serotonergic. I don't know if that is even a word.
Lovely. Yeah, you're getting chemically. I love
obviously,
it.
And then dopamine is so closely related to cortisol. So it's stress, dopamine, stress, and we think that the dopamine is serotonin, but actually it's not. So recognizing.
There you go. So so I guess when you're in equanimity, you've got a perfect chemical balance. So if you talking about equanimity from that perspective, you could say, look, too much of dopamine is not a good thing. Too much of serotonin is not a good thing. It's the balance. It's coming back. You need it all. We need it all. So even you could argue that negative emotions are not negative. We've just labeled them negative. They're just there. And actually, we need them too, because that allows us to experience positive. We need the loneliness so we can be able to be with others. We need the others so we can be able to be lonely. Our conception of whatever, this is a good, this is a bad, all that shit is what is the problem. So if you equanimous, you're recognizing that the mind's trying to do that and it's trying to conceptualize this as a like or a dislike, but actually it's not really. It's based on self-concept. Most of that's unhealthy. Actually, I can just flip the switch. I'm feeling a bit better now. So it's that type of way of being. So I think another thing is focusing too much on the positive emotions and the negative, as if the negative are there to iron out and not experience, where we have to have the balance of it all. So it's more being comfortable with the discomfort than trying to eradicate it from existence. If I do all of this, I'll never be lonely. That's just the wrong way of thinking about it. It's actually...
I'm laughing because it's good.
How can I... It's like, how can I be more comfortable?
That's literally how I think. Oh. Yeah, if I just do enough podcast episodes, I'll never be lonely. That's basically what I think.
Yeah.
If I do enough sets in the gym, I'll never be lonely.
And then you realise that is loneliness.
Yeah. Very good.
And then, but I'm with you, mate. It's like it's a hard terrain to navigate when you're on your own with your own subjective mind making wacky, bloody interpretations about phenomenon. And, on my own, you do feel it when I'm with the baby and there's no one around. I feel lonely even though I'm with someone sometimes, and just being okay with it all. Being comfortable with the discomfort is quite powerful, and accepting the lack of control becomes a form of control, if you know what I mean, like you're accepting it. So you can't control any of it, but if you can accept it, somehow you're controlling all of it.
I put a pin in 3 things I'd love to be able to pick up and make 3 points if I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you go for it.
Number 1, you were referring to you love having these type of conversations where you sort of really dive deep. And in my work, whether it's in the classroom or later workshop talks and keynotes that I did, we call these courageous conversations. So I want to acknowledge the courage it took for you to go on this journey with me. And I also, because there's a lot of discomfort, right? And so I just want to acknowledge the discomfort, even for the listeners. One thing is that a lot of healing is done through discomfort, because it's easier sometimes to just sweep things under the rug. We don't feel the discomfort, but then later, we know suppressed emotions, they're going to show up other places, whether that's physical illness or blow-ups and meltdowns, whatever. So if we can just do the little work in the range of discomfort, we can actually become much more whole, healed, and healthy people, right? So number 1, thanks for the courage to go through this with me. 2, I want to acknowledge that in the coaching that I do, this isn't we don't just sit down and be okay, now we're going to do decolonization. Actually, I never mention it. But here's a little sneak peek. One of the prompts I ask my clients as they're preparing, so many people come to me and say, I don't have a story. And one of the prompts I give them in the first week of coaching is to examine identity. And my goal isn't that they would deep dive into their race. And I don't even bring it up them myself, but a lot of times people end up asking the questions what do I know about my identity and what I don't? And the things that they don't know then becomes an exploration that on the other side of it, they start to feel a lot more clear about who they are, a lot more pride in the story. If you come to me and you said you don't have a story, chances are you haven't been given the space and the tools to sit with it and go through this exploration, like you called it, right? And because you haven't, then you've minimized your identity. Or maybe because of some of these social constructions, you named, if you are of European descent, you're well, I can't really talk about my race because that's not special. That's almost shameful to talk about it. So we all end up flattening ourselves to these socially accepted stories. Well, I work out, that's my story. Or, I'm into drinking coffee, that's my story. Because it's hard to explore things that we haven't been given permission or guidance to explore. Yeah. And then the third thing I'll say is that I always tell my students and clients when discomfort comes up, one thing about our story to acknowledge is that there's aspects of our story we don't choose. And that's another human equalizer. None of us choose what race we are, or parents, where we were born, right? If we've gone through traumatic experiences, that's not by our choice. So there's so many parts of our story that are not by choice, and there's so many parts of our story that are. And we do have power to choose many aspects of the story that we want to live now and that we want to tell in our future. And by doing your story work, you get to reframe and make peace with those aspects of your story that you didn't choose, that are harder to tell, and then lean into the power that you have to make the story from here on in your healing chapter and your healed chapter, to write that story the way that you want to tell it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. You've totally got me in, you've literally got me in story mode or like, oh, it's more like therapy mode. It's weird. Like I've got this feeling in my nervous system where like I'm starting to relax.
Good.
You know, and it's lovely, but also I'm like, what's the next question? Like, because
maybe I talked a little bit too much. 3
No,
points was too many to stack on top of each other.
No, it's cool. This is something I'm really trying to balance, and you might be familiar with this. Like being present with the conversation and listening whilst not trying to queue up your next question, but also allowing like the conversation to be professional, you know, so it doesn't meander off too much. It is such a skill. Whereas like, so then I was just like, because I quite like just listening to you, and then and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I'm the host. What was I? Yeah.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah, let's go.
The pressure you're feeling is also Western socialization. So in indigenous cultures and narrative cultures, when we are having conversation, we have much more socially accepted pause time. So we can listen to a story that meanders, and then we can pause and sit with it. And there's no pressure to have the next question teed up. It's industrialization that said, hey, we're living life on the conveyor belt and you better be ready. You better be primed to push that button or to do your job. Like efficiency is number one because that's what makes the CEO more money. And so we've actually lost the art of deep listening, calming conversations, and storytelling, where in our ancient cultures, yours included, right? Like our Irish cultures, our European cultures, there was somebody in the community whose job was to tell the stories as a way of delivering the most important messages in the community, preserving the oral histories, right? And communicating the news, right? Or whatever needed to be communicated. Their job was so important that they dedicated their entire life to just telling stories and keeping the audience's attention. So it's a lost art. I'll say all that to say it's a lost art. And if you need time to come out of listening and into asking a question, that's normal. Congratulations. You're welcome to experience that.
Yeah, I guess it's like another mask, isn't it? Like that constantly needing to keep the ball rolling. And I think for me, see, it did it then. I paused and I'm
love it.
Okay, and then, but my brain just goes blank because I'm aware of the pause. I had a podcast the other week, actually, and it was this lady's first podcast she'd been on. And every time I paused, she did this little thing where she sort of went, like, and obviously I'm not judging her, but she was kind of like, oh, what's she going to say? And it made me nervous, though, because I can
imagine.
Yeah. And it was sort of like, I was thinking about it this morning, and it made me think about, like, so I used to be terrified of public speaking. And was one time when I was at band camp, this one time when I was at college, I was doing like a stand-up presentation, and I locked eyes with like one of my friends who was in the classroom, and he just went, why'd you keep looking at me? And I was like, oh. And I just like, my whole world just fell down, and like I didn't know what, like, and I've spoken to him about this since, and he was like really apologetic. I was like, you traumatized me for public speaking. Memory. Yeah. Like, because is it when you're not used to it, you don't know where to look, do you? You kind of like, and but yeah, sorry. Like, and again, I've took it way off track there. There's so many different threads that I sort of want to go down.
Let me before we pick up another thread, let me just speak to that, and maybe this will be something that helps you. Or do you feel good about that right now? Yeah, you want a tip?
Yeah, I know. I like it.
So as a person who masks and mirrors, as a neurodivergent person, I learned a lot of my public speaking skills from like studying speakers that I loved the most. And I loved listening to, my favorite speakers have always been Black or Indigenous women. And I watched their mannerisms. And one of the things that would like arrest me, my whole body would have a visceral experience if I was listening to them talk, is when they would tell their story or give the talk, and then they would stop and just be silent, but be in control. The pause was as much a part of the design of the story and the design of the experience they were weaving for the audience.
I suppose for me, what that brings up is like, and again, because I've got like a music background.
I was going to ask you if you play music.
Yeah. It's not so much these days. That's a different story. But most of my life I've been a musician, and I remember learning from, it was a guy called Tom Hingley, and of a band that were famous in the late 80s, early 90s in Manchester called the Inspiral Carpets, and he did like a session with us, and he was talking about like that power of dynamics,
yes,
and leaving dead space,
yes,
being quiet, and then because obviously people then invest in you more than if you're shouting.
And what happens when we're nervous on stage is like physiologically we're going to speed up, right? So physiologically you're going to talk faster, you're going to move faster. A lot of people pace on stage just as an outlet to get their nerves out, right? But if you can, like, next time that you experience a pause when you're talking and you have that filter in your brain saying like, hurry up, they're waiting on me. If you can then in that moment reframe, like, I'm playing music, I'm the storyteller, this pause is part of my story. Even if your brain doesn't have words, respect the pause. If you're channeling divine inspiration, if you're channeling your knowledge, your intuition, your stories, maybe there's a pause in between some of them. Reframe that and see what happens to your nervous system. You might relax.
Hey guys, it's me. Thank you so much for watching that episode, and congratulations for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. A few things before you get going. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to both my guests and myself. And if you made it this far, why don't you drop me a DM?